Good morning and welcome to Kramer's Corner with Daily Technical Update. It is the 2nd of October, it's a Wednesday, and we'll just do a little recap on Apple yesterday, which we talked about. We had closed a little bit higher, but it actually failed to follow through. And it actually didn't close above this spike up there, and maybe that was the reason why it set back yesterday and was testing the 224 support here. If it closes below, well, then we could see a push down to the key support here at 214, and if it closes below that, well, then it doesn't look too good. But for now, we're still holding on in Apple. And let's have a look at Nvidia and also the semiconductor index. We'll have a look at that in a second. Nvidia failed to test the 130, even breaking above it, and the RSI is still below 60 threshold, meaning we are still in a negative sentiment. If we see Nvidia closing below 113, 130 and a quarter, well, then expect a sell-off to hit Nvidia down to 102.95 in this region around here, at least short term. Also, the semiconductor index doesn't look too good. It was rejected here at 237.50. Here is in the form of the iShares semiconductor ETF representing the semiconductor index. And we could see a test of 217.50. If it breaks and close below that level, well, then expect the downtrend to resume on the semiconductors sector. And on S&P 500, it seems like we are now in a correction mode, which was not surprised. We talked about yesterday there was a risk to do that. Possibly down to the 38.2 retracement at 5,628 in this region here, but it's not unlikely in dip lower. However, there's no divergence on the RSI, indicating we could see higher levels on the S&P 500 index, but it is a little bit fragile at the moment, I would say. And we can see here pre-market we are ticking down a little bit, and yeah, here is the US 500 CFD could drop to 5,624 level. The Nasdaq 100, well, it's actually in a positive sentiment, also turned around. And we talked about most of this week, it failed to close above the 20,211 resistance, and then it dropped back below the 20,000. And yesterday it tested 19,622 support, just above the 38.2 retracement here. If it breaks below that, well, we could see a push lower to 19,116 maybe, but I would prefer a close below this 19,622 before I actually expect that. We could see a little bit of a bounce here the next couple of days, and pre-market is more or less unchanged. The European indices, here we have the EUROSTOXX 50. The sell-off continued yesterday, testing 49.43. If it takes out that, and I think if it takes out the lows from yesterday at 49.33, well, then expect a sell-off down to around 48.55, where we have a little bit of support. We also have the 200 moving average coming up. We have the 55 moving average also coming up. You can see there's a little bit of support here around 4,900. For now, we are holding on. We could see a little bit of bounce here, and still remember, we are in a positive sentiment on the RSI, so we should bounce back. If we crawl back above 5,000, then expect the market or EUROSTOXX 50 to try to push towards this resistance level here around 5,077. We can see here on the EUROSTOXX CFD, well, it is bouncing off the 38.2 retracement. The DAX index correction phase here also could correct down to around 19,000, and here there's actually divergence. This peak here is slightly lower than this peak over here, indicating we are showing divergence. It's not really supporting this the last leg up here, or it's actually indicating trend exhaustion. However, let's zoom in then so we better can see what's actually going on. If it takes out the previous all-time high here, 19,492, always add a little bit extra, then I think we'll see a push towards 20,000, and that could be interesting. But for now, we could see a correction down to 19,000. The Amsterdam index, and I'm actually considering skipping this index from my daily update. Please shout out if you want me to keep it. 908 support tested yesterday, bouncing, so we could be range bound in this area here. Really needs the RSI to close above 60 threshold for the AX index to even test the 928 resistance. CAC 40, well, CAC 40 a bit heavy after dropping back below the 100 moving average, could actually drop down to around 7,500, 74.64. But there is positive sentiment, so let's see if it doesn't really try to catch up here the next couple of days. But there is a risk down to that support area there. And now we also have the SMI. The Swiss market, well, sold off heavily yesterday below the 12,119. If it can get back up, maybe we could crawl up to the 12,250, but it really needs to close above that level for confirming a bullish trend that could push towards previous peaks over here from earlier this month, but it doesn't really look like we're in negative sentiment on the RSI. Euro dollar. Let's have a look at euro dollar, it actually dropped below the 61.8 retracement at 110.31 yesterday. That was a support. Now we are bouncing a little bit from the 110.50, which is the 786 retracement. If it takes out the lows from yesterday, well, then expect the 110 to be tested. If it takes out 110, close below there, then the medium-term bullish trend is also in jeopardy. But for now, I think we could bounce a little bit, but keep an eye on these levels there. If we move back above 110.85, well, then we could maybe see your dollar slightly trying to crawl higher. Euro sterling here, dancing dust around a little bit to the downside around 83.40. We are in a negative trend. We are in a negative sentiment on the RSI. There is no divergence, so I think we will see euro sterling actually resuming downtrend after dancing around sideways here the next past few days. I think it will resume downtrends towards 82.50, 82.75. And cable, also correction unfolding in cable, and let's see where we are here. But it has bounced from a 132.65 support and the 38.2 retracement, which is just around here. If it takes out the lows from yesterday, expected to move down to 131.67, which is a 61.8 retracement. Otherwise, we could bounce a little bit. However, divergence indicating we are likely to see a larger correction down to this level here at the 131.67. Moving on to the yen pairs, and we can see that the yen is actually bouncing from the 61.8 retracement. I do apologize for all these Fibonacci ones, but it is important to work with, and you can see how it actually moves. So we have the blue sets and we have the red sets. The blue sets is the correction, the bounce up here and down to the correction at the 142.22. Bounce from that, and now we are close to test after this selling down here at the 61.8 retracement, also here at 144.65. If it takes out that, well, we could see a bounce up to 145.46 level, but we have the 55 moving average coming down, kind of putting a lid on it, so there will be a little bit of a struggle to move higher. It really needs to close above 147.21 for a push up to 149.40 and maybe even higher. If it takes out the lows here from the other day at 149.60, then expect dollar yen to resume downtrend below 140. Euro yen is still holding on above the 61.8 retracement and 158.33. could bounce a little bit, but it is in a negative sentiment. But there was this divergence here, as you can see, indicating this bound here. Taking out the lows from the 30s at 158, well, then expect euro yen to slide lower towards 155. And on the Aussie yen, well, it's trying to knock on this 99.90. It did it yesterday, couldn't get above. Can it get above today? The RSI actually tells me, well, there is a possibility it could push higher. And if it takes out the spike up here, 100 spot 72, 175, I would say, then expect a push up to around 102.5 at least. Otherwise, if it takes out 98, expect downtrend to resume towards 96.30, possibly even lower. And on the sterling yen, dancing around this 32.8 retracement, really indecisive, but the RSI is telling me, well, we could see a push above 193.50, but I'm not quite sure how long it will last, but we could see that if it does push back above here, well, then the previous peak and the 100 moving average could once again be tested. If it takes out to the downside, 189.50, well, then expect a sell-off down to around 186.30 level. Aussie dollar, well, it can't really follow through with the where it actually traded above 69. It got up to around just below 69.50, and then we formed this top and reversal like pattern here, where we see we have bullish trends, we have bullish candles, then we have an indecisive one called a doji, and then we have a negative one, a bearish candle. So I think we could see a correction possibly down to the 38.2 retracement, just around 68.20. If it drops back, it could actually dip below here. If it does close below 68.14, then I think we'll see a correction down to around 67.45, which is 68 retracement. If it takes out the peak up here at 69.45, well, then expect a push ups to around 70. And the dollar Canada, well, the dollar Canada correction has lost steam and already got rejected there at, well, it's actually just the 21 moving average. It's not that really strong, to be honest. And it only got up to 50% of this downtrend here, not even up to 61.8 retracement, which is actually the normal, but now it's resuming downtrend. I think we'll see it pushing towards the previous lows here, just below 134.40. And the overall picture is we are in a bearish trend, but there was divergence here. As you can see, the values were actually rising here on the RSI, whereas the market was declining. But it seems like we are resuming downtrend. And we did look at sterling Canada some time ago. I have a couple of clients that are interested in looking at that, and back then it was still in bullish trend. Now it seems like the bullish trend has exhausted, and I think we could see a push lower. And if we add a Fibonacci to it, we could it can give us a little bit of a guidance to where it could actually go. The thing is, it's quite a volatile FX pair, but I think we could see the 61.8 retracement here at 178.60 being tested, and the low rising trend line. If it pushes below both, well, then we are looking at 177.80. Euro Swiss, well, I think we will see it testing 93 fairly shortly. It's very close to resuming downtrend. To reverse that, we need to move above a 95 and a change 95.10. If it takes out a 93, which I believe it will do, because at that time the RSI will probably also be below 40 threshold. If it closes below there, well, then expect much lower levels on Euro Swiss, 92.5, possibly dipping all the way down to the 92.20 lows here back from August. Dollar Swiss, well, it's still range bound in this range between 84 and 85.40. That is the key levels to look out for, so not much to talk about there really. The dollar index here, well, very close to test the 101.18 resistance. If it breaks above that, then I think we'll see a push up to 101.86, where we have the 55 moving average coming down, giving it a downside pressure. But the RSI exhaustion indicator, as we can use it for here. Well, RSI, there was divergence, so I think we will see a push up to around that level. Whether we'll break it or not, it is a strong resistance. I think we will see a setback, and then the dollar index resuming downtrend. Gold bounced yesterday, and again, a lot of Fibonacci levels, but stay with me and we'll have a look at, we will check them out here. So we actually corrected only 38.2 before bouncing, and then it bounced up to the 786 retracement, the little sell-off here. So I actually say keep an eye on this range. If it takes out 2,624, expect a sell-off down to 2,600 and possibly dipping down to 2,576, testing this lower rising trend line. If it takes out the peak from yesterday, I don't think you need to wait until 2686 here. Then if it takes out the peak from yesterday, then I think we'll see higher levels on gold. And also, since there's no divergence on the RSI, it is actually supporting higher levels on gold. Well, I think we'll see a push above 2,700, 2,720, maybe even higher. For silver, a little bit different, but also a lot of Fibonacci levels, as we can see here. Bounced from the 61.8 retracement of the last leg up there, and 38.2 retracement of the entire move up there, just above it. If it stays above that, then I think we could crawl higher towards the previous peak here at 32.72. If it takes out that, then expect the silver metal to push higher towards, and I have this medium-term target of 34.5, 35.5 in that region. Copper, well, also in a correction phase after spiking higher, so we are actually in a correction phase here. It corrected down to the 38.2 at 450. If it takes out 450, then we could see it sliding lower towards 440, maybe even 443, 442 before I think we will rebound. There's no divergence on the RSI, actually supporting higher levels. If it starts crawling back above 470, where it spiked above, then expect a push up to around 490 short term. Looking at crude oil, that bounced off, WTI bounced off the 786 retracement, and it's very close to test the 72.50 key strong resistance around here. I think we should adjust that a little bit, and we can do that by this. And for 72.50, if it breaks above that, well, then we could see a push higher, but let's see if it becomes rejected. And of course, this is the tension in the Middle East that is speaking here. Looking at the broader picture, the bigger picture, we are still below this lower rising trend line, and it needs to break back above it for maybe demolishing this breakout pattern here. So let's give it a couple of days and see what happens. If it takes out the lows from yesterday, well, then we are back in business with the bearish trend. Brent crude oil, also same picture, 75.87. If it takes out that, well, then expect a push higher. And what we can actually do, and this is what you can do yourself, and since this is an educational piece, there's no recommendation in this, you can add your Fibonacci there and say, well, then there's potential up to 78. 15, 79.5 in this region there, but you can also see testing the lower rising trend line there once again. Finally, let's have a look at the US Treasury yield that actually dropped yesterday, and zoom out a little bit. It dropped lower, and it did test the 372 support close below, trying to get back up here. I think if it takes out the lows from yesterday at 368.9, 368, well, then I think we'll see a test of the 360 threshold of support down here. If it takes out 382, well, expect a push up to 392 level, but there is hit resistance with this 55 moving average coming down there. So this breakout of this falling wedge-like pattern, well, it's not really pushing for it. And if we just very quickly look at the treasury note, the actual future, well, here it is. You can see how it broke out, but it's not the best. It's not the best pattern, to be honest. And I think we should adjust it like that. That is more accurate, actually. There we go. It actually did break out, but it should have dropped down to this region here around 113.5 ish. All right, that's all for today. Have a nice day. Talk to you again tomorrow.